Change your brain, change your life. Welcome to the Ketamine Coaching Academy podcast. Join me, Bronwyn Davis, 25 years as a success coach for high performers and the visionary leader behind Conscious Ketamine Coaching Academy, as I guide you through this groundbreaking approach to healing, personal development, and empowerment. Come for the education, stay for the enlightenment, and leave ready to transform. Welcome to the Ketamine Coaching Academy. I'm Bronwyn Davis, your host, and I'm here with Michelle Brewer, someone who is very important to me and a special person in my life. And I'm excited that Michelle's here because she's going to bring a very fresh perspective to this topic of therapeutic ketamine. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn.
It's so great to have you here. And I just really want us to jump in because you do have a very unique way of seeing not only this medicine, but also how you are using this medicine. So I want to hear from you. What kind of brought this on as far as how you got started in your own personal life as well as with your passion of eating disorders?
Right. Well, thank you. Um, I could say that when I first heard about psychedelics, I knew that there was going to be a great future with advancing what we could do for healing, and especially with disordered eating. And I like to say disordered eating because I think everyone has something that they could figure out a little bit more with their relationship to food. And it's much more inclusive to think about disordered eating than the people on the extremes. But for me, I thought about the value of ketamine a lot because of a training I did and the chance to do a practicum with an organization and their program called Roots to Thrive, and did my practicum affiliated with them in Vancouver Island University. And then I wrote my final project for the possibility of adding an adjunct program to what they offer around disordered eating. And they work with ketamine as their primary medicine, so it fit in really well.
And what are you finding with this medicine now and disordered eating? What has the research been showing you?
Well, I think one of the big parts about the research that's exciting is that this aspect of psychedelic medicine and a concept called rebus, I think it's Carhart Harris's concept, which means relaxed beliefs under psychedelics. And it's this power of neuroplasticity. So when we're working with an addiction or a challenge, we have these really set neural pathways. And if we can work with psychedelics, it has this benefit of like melting our rigid structures on the one hand, making us more available to new ways of doing and new ways of thinking. And then when we have this fresh openness, we have the ability to practice something new. And then the other benefit of the psychedelics is it helps us freeze that into place. After the melting comes the solidifying. And two reasons I find this really important. I come from the perspective of intuitive eating, that we have these answers within ourselves when it comes to our relationship and our challenges, and that this is intuitive. It's hunger and it's satiety, and we need to reconnect. But a lot of us have had that disconnected. So the psychedelics provide the opportunity to have that new possibility of different habits. On the one hand, reconnecting to ourselves. But the other way I find it really important is most of us with a complicated relationship to food have really critical thinking and self-talk. And at the same time, it's great for providing perspective on that and seeing a more global or transcendent and compassionate relationship to ourselves, so we can step out of that.
Yeah. Can you share with us a personal or client story so we can like really understand what it looks like when someone comes to you, what they are maybe feeling challenged with, and then as they go through this ketamine-assisted therapy, that they then are at the other end? What does it look like?
Okay. Well, I will say that most people I work with, one of the ways my work is innovative is I tend to work with people who overeat rather than restrict their food. And I'd start them off talking about both things when they come into me. What's their relationship to food and eating? What would it be like to imagine eating when someone's hungry, stopping when they've had enough? And that's novel. But I think the hardest part of this approach is eating with full attention on your food. So you're not doing anything but eating when you're eating. You're not scrolling. You're not listening to other things. Like you're really taking all your senses internally, because you can't notice enough if you don't eat with all of your senses. So this is an opportunity. If you don't eat with all your senses, your stop signal is discomfort rather than satisfied. So that's one thing we talk about. What would it be like to slow down and only pay attention to the food and use mindfulness to get there? What would come up for someone? And on the other hand, it's really building an appreciation of why that habit has served them and what it's been doing, and for the critical self-talk that most of us have, it is so mean that a lot of us run to food to have some relief from it at the same time. So it's really important to see both of those in tandem with each other. So I work with people in counseling to help them slow down the self-talk and see the criticism and actually see that those voices come from somewhere. They're not random. They usually come from their childhood and their primary caregivers, who probably had it from their own primary caregivers and their friends and society around them. We want to challenge those. What happens when we bring ketamine or psychedelic journeys into that is that they can step back and have a bigger view of why that happened, maybe connect to early incidents in their life where they didn't have the attachment or the connection they needed from their loved ones, and turning to food was a really caring option in that moment, and stop being at war with themselves for what they did. Like, why do I have this crazy habit? All of a sudden, with the help of the therapy, especially as it's been catalyzed by psychedelics, they can go, oh, wow, I had no other choice. I couldn't deal with that by myself. I had no option. So they get this perspective that they didn't have before. And then I often, with my clients, will either do direct eating with them one-to-one, or we might have a collective meal together. And we might take a lozenge or a lower dose of ketamine to just have a new way of approaching the eating. And that might make the habits more accessible, the new tuning into the sense awareness and the mindfulness.
I can hear this is such an innovative way
Yeah.
of not only eating, but also working with the medicine.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what you were talking about, the collective eating. Like, what
Yeah.
does that look like?
Well, I want to first of all give some credit to my teacher of 10 years, Janine Roth.
Yes.
Like I said, I worked with her in California 4 times a year for 10 years. And I have never found something as like exquisite to deal with food and eating. She's looking at not just the psychological habits, but the spiritual aspect of food. And her most famous book is Women, Food, and God.
Mhm.
And so what I've tried to do is adapt all the insights that I got from her to a psychedelic environment, where she might do it in a mindfulness or a retreat environment. We practice all the same things, but the psychedelics just get us there a little bit faster. So what the highlight, I think, of a 6-day retreat with Janine Roth is that every morning we have breakfast together. Everyone gets their plates. We meet in a large space. We do meditation. We slow down. We eat in silence. We take a couple bites, and then we break. And we're given the opportunity to reflect, to see how this is going for us in this community. And then she might ask, does anyone have any questions or comments about how this is going? And it always gets into these like deep insights. And it might not be you who's put up your hand to talk, it might be someone else, but you can absolutely relate to them. And that's the beauty of doing it in this environment. So I have adapted that in my practice, and especially one of my protocols with psychedelics is that in this eating environment, we meditate for 5 minutes. We do a gratitude practice. We look at our food. We take, like, with new eyes, like with these beginner eyes, we look at our plate. And then we each take 3 bites in silence with all of our senses, smelling, tasting, listening, feeling texture, as well as tasting. And then after 3 bites, I invite people to put down their silverware and take a break, because most of us don't get to explore what goes on for us with food while we're eating. Like there's just a whole level of insight as to what you're doing to slow that down. Most of us go right to the next bite. And I also find that if we can slow down and kind of get back to ourselves, we get a lot of our autonomy back. So what I've created is this 3 bites, 5-minute break, 3 bites, 5-minute break, to have this insight in the process. And so when we do that with psychedelics, it just augments everything that we've already been bringing to it. There's deeper mindfulness in the meditation, more vivid sense experience, taste, everything. And then when we're eating and we take these breaks, and I often prompt my groups with questions either in dyads, or we would do a question around the room, we get that same benefit of the Jeanine Roth retreat of identifying with everyone else and feeling that connection, feeling relationship. And I believe that most of us are turning to food or away from food based on relational challenges. And so the ketamine helps us be that much more relational and see that there's support and there's people and there's connection.
The ketamine also is such a heart opener.
Exactly.
So what do you see as this group is going along this journey with you? What do you start seeing in them transform?
In like the one meal, I really see a pronounced building of like insight from moment to moment, like maybe from person to person. They just let themselves go so much deeper because their hearts are open and they're identifying and they're taking the risk. But I see that happening from week to week. Like we do in Roots to Thrive a 12-week program with 1 class per week and 1 meal per week together. And you see the connection of the people, and yet just like loosening up their self-judgment, because they don't judge everyone else with this heart opener. And if they can hold each other in compassion, well, maybe they can hold themselves in compassion. So there's like really, yeah, a deepening of seeing themselves mirrored in their warmth and their understanding for the people they're on the journey with.
How many people are in your group, and is it only in person or is it online? How does that work?
So based on the Roots to Thrive model, it is 100% online. So we do the only thing, like Roots to Thrive is a 12-week program that meets Tuesdays for 2 hours online. And it started as a resilience program, and then it worked into a psychedelic program. So at the ends of week 4, 6, and 8, your small group as part of your cohort will meet together to do an I Am Ketamine journey. That happens 3 times. Otherwise, the whole program is over Zoom. And what we did with Roots to Thrive Intuitive Eating, so this adjunct, is we added Fridays where we met for an hour and a half over Zoom, where people showed up with their meal ready to go. And then we did eating, and in the breaks, we would do specific exercise to target a topic of that week with relation to food and relationship to self.
When you were talking earlier, you said they really get in touch with the root cause of what has promoted that overeating. What have you noticed as far as, is there a common thread? Are you starting to see some patterns here?
I see that it has been a medicine in a way, that it's a way of treating pain, that people typically have gone through really hard things and they've gone through them alone. And when they didn't have relationship to lean on, they had a substance to lean on. And food is such an easy substance to lean on, especially if you don't have a lot of other options. Like it's always there. I do see men in my practice, but for women, we grow up being associated with cooking and food, and it's a realm we feel comfortable accessing and moving in. So that I see that women quite easily move into there if they want to self-regulate or self-medicate with food. But there are always amazing reasons why people are emotionally eating or overeating. But I do find quite often it's a troubled relationship to a mom. That's one of the most consistent things I find. And there was one when we did our first Roots to Thrive cohort around food and eating, it was stunning how much relationship to mom came up for people. Like it was moving for people. It was moving for the staff to see just how big this was. And this critical self-talk that might start with some kind of like criticism of something in their life, but unfortunately over time it starts to be the relationship to food and eating, and then it becomes a perpetual cycle and a war where the people are so upset with themselves. But with my objectivity, I can see that they really did the best they could in such a difficult situation, and it's like slowly giving them the chance to build that for themselves. And one of the lead physician at Roots to Thrive says that we heal at the speed of trust, and that's really what I see with the people, is that the criticism is understandable, the turning to support is really understandable because there was no one else there, and that in time you will catch up to me in this like compassion for the horrible situation you were in.
Yes. Well, yeah, when you think about it, especially as young kids, okay, we don't have access to alcohol. We don't have
Exactly.
access to drugs or anything,
Yeah.
when we're 5 or 4 or whatever it
Yeah.
is that we start this. So it makes sense that it's food.
In fact, when I see people with big food issues, I think that the pain either started very early or their circumstances were they didn't have a lot of means to other things, just for what you're saying. Like, oh, they had to turn to what they had access to. And so if it's food, chances are it was something happened to them very early when that was the only option they had.
Yes. And when you say that you're really seeing mother issues, what specifically, if you can kind of drill it down a little bit, what was mom doing that maybe provoked this a little bit?
Well, probably a lot of moms were overwhelmed and or coming in with their own deficits from their own childhood. So we're seeing intergenerational trauma of mom not having everything that she needed to develop. And so she's parenting from a deficit. And I think there's a lot of jealousy between mothers and daughters. So that's one thing. Daughters are accommodating to moms, to be pleasing to moms. And one thing that I see over and over again is what Gabor Mate's work talks about, the authenticity attachment bind. I would call it the authenticity attachment bind, where I want to be myself, but I need my relationship to you, mom, to survive. And where there's a conflict between my authentically being myself and my needing to be in relationship to you, this attachment to you will always win. And then what do I do with the part of me that wants to shine, the part of me that wants to have boundaries, that feels really rageful, that I can't have my life? And I feel like the difficulty with moms and daughters is that moms didn't get the life they wanted. So it can be quite activating for them to see the daughters have the life that they couldn't have. And then the cycle perpetuates. And I want to say, by way of like mother blaming, it's hard to be an authentic woman in a world of patriarchy. So women are set up as mothers. But at the same time, I wish that there were more women on a healing path who in some ways would take responsibility for their role in things. And I speak of my own mom when I think of that.
Are you seeing that? Are you seeing moms who are wanting to take responsibility for their impact on their daughters and children?
I Lucky me, I think I only see those moms because they're in therapy. So they're trying to stop things where they are so they don't perpetuate it. And then I
Beautiful.
see
Yeah.
them talk about the relationship that they had and where they were let down. So yeah, I'm seeing the very best and the very worst of moms.
So you're not only seeing the result like with the children, or not children, but just the grown adult
Yes.
now, the grown children,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing the moms wanting to get the help as well.
Exactly. And
You're
not
seeing
wanting to
both.
do this again, like knowing how hard it was for them and just really wanting to make a difference. And they might not come knowing that. Most people come wanting to change their bodies. And I support that. I'm 100% supportive of, I'm not going to be pro thin, pro fat, anti thin, anti fat. The thing I love about intuitive eating is it's your hunger signals. Your body is your body, and it doesn't have to match anyone's charts or scales or anything. It's like we say in psychedelics, it's part of your inner healing, your inner wisdom that will come from within you and manifest in the world. But it takes people a while to warm up to the fact that this is an inside job, and that really the food and eating is the smoke to a fire. And we need to get to the fire. And it's, I'd say it's almost always this attachment authenticity bind. And I recently read an excellent paper by Vincent Felitti, who is the father of adverse childhood experiences. And he developed the idea by working with obese women, and he would get them to thinness, like to the supposed appropriate weight for their size, and then notice that they couldn't keep the weight off. He had this like shake with all the vitamins in it and everything, and he would work with people who were like upwards of 300 pounds and get them to 120 pounds, and then they couldn't keep the weight off. And that they said there's something more going on here, and there was always trauma underneath the weight. So I get my people to that, into their early life. What was it that they were in pain about, and start to work with that.
That is so beautiful, Michelle. You are doing such amazing work.
Thank you.
We are going to take a break, but I am really excited about us coming back after the break and talking further about our body's innate intelligence. I know that's something that is near and dear to your heart. We're going to go deeper into that when we come back. This podcast is sponsored by Conscious Ketamine Coaching Academy. Step into the future of mental wellness. I'm Bronwyn Davis, founder of Conscious Ketamine Coaching Academy. This isn't just a career, it's a calling to guide deep, meaningful change. By integrating transformative coaching with therapeutic ketamine, a cutting-edge healing tool, we empower our clients to heal and grow beyond their expectations. Ready to make an impact? Click below to learn more. Welcome back to Ketamine Coaching Academy. I'm your host, Bronwyn Davis, and I'm here with Michelle Brewer. And we are having such a deep conversation on ketamine-assisted therapy along with disordered eating. And I really want to know from Michelle, what advice would you have to women and men who are in the throes of disordered eating right now?
If I could like plant one seed, and I say it's a seed for the reasons I was saying before, like it might take a little bit of time to let this penny drop, because food's doing so much for us in our emotional system, is that the war that many of us have with changing our eating is a false war. Like it's a proxy war. It's like not the real thing that's going on. It is a distraction. Now, it's not fully a distraction. It is true that we are fighting with ourselves, but it's not really what the fight is about. And by keeping up the fight with food, it's doing us this benefit of not seeing what the real problem is. So maybe having some curiosity about what the real war is, and it will take some of the pressure off the relationship to food and eating. Now, when I say that, I am by no means saying that you have to give up on healing your relationship to food and eating. It's a little bit like the paradox of mindfulness and detachment. Like when you can kind of step back from it a little bit, you actually give yourself more autonomy in dealing with it. But I would love people to think about the fact that diets can never work. So if you are in the direction of trying to be on some kind of diet, whether that's calories or paleo or keto, if you're doing anything that restricts what you eat or gives you a program where you don't get to use your own instincts, you will fight back. Like, it's surprising for me that people don't realize that it's human nature to fight back. If you are being imposed on in any way, you will fight back. So the whole diet mentality, it's just such a perfect distraction because you will keep having this struggle forever. And I read in a book that a man had a great clinic, I think his name was Bob Schwartz, that he taught intuitive eating to people to show them how to lose weight. And then a lot of people wanted to gain weight. And so he said, I have a program for you to gain weight. And people would say, oh, I can't gain weight. I want to come to your program. What could you be doing differently? Because I've tried my whole life to gain weight. And he would make them sign a waiver that if they gained too much weight, they wouldn't hold them responsible. And they would laugh and say, that could never happen to me because I've tried so long to gain weight. And what he would do is he would put them on a 3-day diet. They would lose weight, but then they would gain it all back. And he'd say, well, I want you to keep the weight off. Let's just see. And then they would diet again, lose less weight, but gain more back. And so he put them on the cycle. And over time, they had an eating issue. And that is what happens to all of us, I think, when we think that maybe by controlling our food, we control the environment. Like, I can't control this big thing that's going on, but if I control my food, I have a foothold in something. But what we learn about psychedelics is, and the world and spirituality, is you can't control. You have to turn toward and allow and mindfulness and let it be there, and let whatever pain that we've gone through that's unfortunate, let it complete. We can't push this river up. We have to open in support with all the possible resources we can, because we were small and we couldn't have handled it before, but we can now with community, with medicine. We can allow something to finish, and then we can be reconnected to ourselves.
That is such amazing work that is happening in this field. You talked about like being able to step back and kind of look at, what is going on. And ketamine is such a beautiful medicine to actually help you get that different perspective. Is that one of the reasons why it is just it's working so well?
I mean, that's the beautiful reason why it's working so well. Like, that there's also like really amazing practical reasons. Like, so many people can use it versus the like people who most need psychedelics are often the people who can least take them because they're taking antidepressants and other things, and they can't take the classic psychedelics. Whereas with ketamine, almost everyone can take it because it's a different set of neurotransmitters. And the journey is shorter, the safety profile is amazing, and it's just so heart opening, and it does this beautiful work. It's such a gift.
It is such a gift. I know. I mean, I love working with it, not only personally, but with my clients as well. And I see the transformation. And I love the work that you are doing because you're taking this beautiful medicine and applying it to disordered eating. You talked about earlier about rebus. Can
Yes.
you share with us a little more about what that means and, really how you are using it in your practice?
Right. So REBUS is an acronym for Relaxed Beliefs Under Psychedelics. And it pairs so well with this work related to addiction. And I personally would see food issues doing the same work as all the other addictions do. And so what you get in the moment of psychedelics, if you're taking a smaller dose, or in the time immediately after, is with your, I don't know how to say, like the influence of the psychedelics on your neuroplasticity at that moment. You are open to breaking habits that you couldn't otherwise break. It might not be for a long time, but it's usually enough that you can try new things in either in the moment of the experience or in the wake of the experience that would seem not possible to you. And then you're building this new pathway of trying something that you can then ingrain. And I think of a lot of people talk about the benefit of psychedelics is shaking the snow globe versus, you are on a ski hill and you want to ski down in a new and exciting way in your life, but there's all these ruts in the snow already. And the minute you start to ski down, your skis immediately get caught in those ruts. And that's not fun for you anymore. And what happens to psychedelics, it's like new snow falls, and that lifts you out of the old habits, but it also allows you into these new directions. And so it's the twofer. It gets you out and also gives you like the fertile ground for new at the same time as it gets you out. And if we are looking at changing habits, it just gives us enough of a lift that the pull of the overeating or the pull of the self-criticism is just not as strong. And then the other power is that you just see so many more options that you didn't see before. And then that can over time just build as the scaffolding to changing the way that you have been acting. And it's so powerful because most of us with challenges like this are identified with what we've been doing. Like we know intellectually that it can be in another way, but kind of in our being, we don't know that it can be a different way. And when we have these positive experiences with rebus, neuroplasticity, I believe we start to get a new sense of ourselves because we've been so identified with this. I am an overeater. Suddenly I'm not an overeater. Well, then who am I if I can change this? So yeah, that concept really helped me understand about what the ketamine is helping the folks do. And I see it happening both, I said, in the rethinking around the self-criticism and in the all of a sudden I can eat differently. I can be happy with my experience. I can stop it enough and feel really light and positive about who I am rather than weighed down and lethargic and discouraged.
In this way of eating, is it the type of thing where really anything goes? It's kind of like if their body craves something, then it's okay, even if it's a cookie or something else. Can you explain a little bit
Sure.
about what that means when it comes to the food, if there's no dieting?
So I'm going to give you a solid yes and no to the answer. I do not believe there are any good or bad foods out there. And it's interesting because if I backtrack for a moment, when we talk about self-criticism, one thing I learned from Janine Roth's work, that you're in the realm of self-criticism when you're speaking to yourself in terms of good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. Over time, you will rebel against that. I say that because that's usually the talk we have around foods. I should eat that. I shouldn't eat that. So it's like an external thing telling you what to do rather than, so ideally what you want in intuitive eating, you're recognizing your hunger cue, your fullness or satiety cue, but you're also looking for your, what do I feel like cue? So it's not just, I'm going to look out there and see what's yummy. You want what you're turning to eat to come from your body in as much as your hunger comes from your body and not just from your head. And what I love about this is that gets to be delicious. Eating gets to be delicious. And yeah, I don't think that you are going to feel healthy eating cookies and cake and deep fried foods all the time, but there's nothing inherently wrong with them. But if you're consistently eating them, I think you're eating a feeling rather than eating from the inside out. And so I would want to explore that with a client to be like, what are you getting from this? What is this? I know that my emotional eating foods are all related to milk. I think that speaks to the early relationship to my mom. Like that is very, very comforting to me. And
Yes.
so I would invite people, if they're consistently eating a certain food that doesn't feel right for them or doesn't feel right in their bodies, or they're consistently eating it because it helps them feel safe. Like I'm eating like this really strict way if I only eat vegetables. Like all food is okay. All food is good. So I would challenge anyone to be like, well, what do you feel when you eat this? Let's explore that feeling and then see what happens with relationship to the food. But my approach is very aligned with a program called HAES, HAES, health at any size, health at every size, taking the judgment out of everything. And on their website, they talked about a study they did with two groups of people, I think one in Thailand, maybe one in Scandinavia. And they prepared a meal for both groups that was really aligned with a food they would have in their culture. And then with the leftovers, they designed another meal, but all the leftovers they had, but it was not appetizing at all. And most of the people didn't like the meal. And what they found is that when they ate the exact same food, but prepared in a different way that wasn't appealing to them, they absorbed less nutrition from the exact same food.
Wow.
So
Wow.
food gets to be delicious, but we also want to be curious about if there's patterns that we know. Like, we want to ask ourselves when we finish a meal, do I feel light and delighted and excited to carry on? Or do I feel like a bit drowsy or a bit lethargic? So I like to think that my relationship to food isn't just while it's in my mouth. It starts with my eyes and ends with digestion. And I want to be getting feedback at not just the taste, but at all moments of how the food is for me.
You talked about how for you the dairy seems to be,
Mm-hmm.
connected. What would you say for people who are really moving more towards sugar? Like they
Yeah.
really need sugar sweets.
I would say, and I learned this with Janine, and I've completely seen this with my own clients, they're missing sweetness in their life. Like sweetness, like caring, like I tend to interpret my love of dairy. I'm missing my mom at such a fundamental level. But I think that a lot of us had busy parents and didn't get enough of the, oh, sweetheart, oh, honey. And we're giving that to ourselves in the best way that we know how. And it's been stunning how many people, are you missing sweetness or caring? Or tell me about, were there moments in your life where you didn't get enough attention?
So how do they now as adults give that? Is it more like giving it to themselves, or how are they getting it now without, let's say, sugar
Right.
foods?
So again, I would say both. Like, if you can give it to yourself, great. But also, you don't want to always give everything to yourself. Sometimes you want to get stuff given to you. One sweetness that I like to do for myself is I like to get my hair done every week. I don't want to do my own hair. I go to a hair school and have them do my hair. And I get touch and attention, and I come out feeling like I look my best. And that's just like a caring for me that I would do for myself. Like I would have someone do for me. A caring for myself would be to make my bed. I like to come into my room when my bed's made, or to make sure I always have good groceries. But I think you want to strike a balance of what I can do for me and what I can invite or pay or arrange for other people to do for me.
Hmm. Do you find that those who are maybe, whether it's sweetness, whether it's dairy, whether it's flour, do you find that they do have a hard time receiving love as
Yes.
well, receiving
Yeah.
caring?
And they'll have tons of reasons why to not count themselves into that equation, where it would be like better, right, good, all those like words I was talking about before, just to not consider themselves at all, right? Like, well, if I didn't buy myself that thing, then I could save more money. Like into like a formula where they approve of themselves more if they don't have any needs. And I'll always say to people, um, who have a challenge to make time for their specific needs, how are your needs tended to in your life, like in your childhood? Like, you seem to have a challenge here, um making time for you. Was time ever, how was time made for you as a young person? And I've had people like shocked when I've said that, like, stilled, time wasn't made for me. And then I'll say, do you realize that you're repeating the same thing? And most of us are. Like, it's not magic. We don't know any other way. But in some ways, people's relationship to food and eating, and how I see it, but I'm sure with all of the addictions, I know what happened in their childhood by learning about what they do with food. They are treating their tender needs with relationship to food, they're replaying that child-parent relationship in the format of rule-based mind to tender part of self. They've just pulled that in and they're running the same relationship all over again. So what I try to do is bring them back to the early relationship, build understanding and gratitude and compassion for what they went through so that they don't have to keep running it in a bid to try to heal it, because I believe we repeat to repair.
Yes.
And if we don't have new resource, we will keep repeating rather than repairing. So if we can move the dynamic to where it actually happened, then we can do some healing around it. But the real, like I said before, the food and eating is the smoke, not the fire. We have to go back to the fire to stop the smoke.
Yes. I just had such an aha moment when you were talking. It's just like about making time for myself now. I've been challenged. I feel like, and I feel like I've noticed I'm making excuses like, oh, well, I'm too busy, or, oh, I'm running a business. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm a partner. All these different things that I'm doing and not making time for myself. But I have not equated it back to my childhood when I could look and say, well, those who were caring for me didn't have time for me as well. And I have been trying to break this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle, I think you just helped me do it.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like, wow. Such a light bulb moment that
Wow.
now more than ever, it's important for me to take care of myself
Absolutely.
and not only take care, but be caring.
Mm-hmm.
Be caring and give time and caring. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I do
really,
think of it as, I mean, it's cliche terms, but we're using food to parent ourselves if we're overeaters. So what if we worked food out of a job? What if I took that on and did things for me?
wow. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. This is such exciting work that you are
Mm.
doing. As you look over these next few years and you look at this, you look at ketamine, you look at disordered eating, and you see these positive things that are happening. What are you most excited about in this
Yeah.
healing
Well, I mean,
modality?
I'm excited that we have this amazing psychedelic that's already legal. So rather than, I mean, great as we're in the process of like revamping all the other ones, but in the meantime, there are these amazing programs that already exist. Your program, Roots to Thrive, all these things. And what I see, especially for women, but all people, um, we get distracted by our relationship to food and eating. What would we be doing to change the world if we redirected that attention? Like if we took the distraction away and did something, like we would all be a bunch of like revolutionaries. So I think that when we have the courage with relationship to food and eating to say, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't want to be at war with myself. I want to dive a little deeper and see what's going on. Then we can reorient our life to like really big change. And that's just a way that most people have something going on with food that right there, if we didn't have this war, if we didn't have this distraction, which I think ketamine and especially like group therapy programs around, like however great the size is, where we're learning from each other and we're gaining that compassion from each other, we are going to have so much more available attention and energy to do things that really matter to change the world.
Mm. And what do you see too, not only like with your clients, but with the work you're doing? Do you see it evolving into and morphing and growing? What do
Yeah.
you just see in your mind's eye of what's possible here?
I feel like so many of my clients who I work with the one-on-one, that they're just reaching their potential, like that they were having great lives, but they're just not quite getting somewhere. Like they're just not quite getting their head above the crowd. And I don't want to say that some people are better than others, but you know, when you're standing in your power and your gifts. And that's what I want to do, like help people be their best selves whatever that is. And I feel like medicine, psychedelics is the best way. I found talk therapy is great, but to get really to that high level, if am I doing what I was put on this earth to do? There's it's medicine that's helping me help others and helping me help myself to get to that place of I'm gonna leave my mark.
Well, thank you so much for doing this work. It is such brilliant work, Michelle. Share with us, how can people get a hold of you? What is the best way for them to find you?
Okay, so I have my own website, michellebrewer.com. People can reach me there. I have a Facebook page, Taste the Freedom, and I will be developing a 12-week program called Taste the Freedom that runs like the Roots to Thrive program or one of my protocols without the psychedelics, so people can find me that way. I have a profile on psychedelic support under Michelle Brewer if people want to find me there.
Hmm. Anything else you want to tell someone who is listening right now that just might even be of comfort to them as they're listening to you?
Well, if it comes to food and eating, like you were saving your life, and that's a big deal. And it's such a important shift. Like it's scary to let that go, but everything starts when when you start to just change the direction on that and realize it was a powerful and amazing thing you did. And you still cannot give up on yourself. Because I think a lot of people, especially women, were so judged by appearance. I know that there's something wrong with dieting. I know like this isn't the answer, but I don't know what else the answer is. And so we cling to it because we don't know what else to do and we don't want to give up on ourselves. And there is a third way. And I think that third way isn't just peace with food in our bodies, but it brings us back to ourselves in a way. Like I said, we get to be who we were meant to be. And in some ways, it gets to be a gift, this challenge.
And we come out of it even better because we
Yes.
know ourselves more. We
Yes.
know ourselves on a deeper level, and we're authentic and real with ourselves.
Yeah,
And what there's really no greater gift, is there,
exactly.
when
Yeah.
we're brought back to ourselves. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been an amazing conversation. And I am so excited to just see where this all goes for you. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.